couple of things I wanted to say, but I wondered if you were familiar with the work and the work of Israel Shahak, and particularly, specifically, the work that he did around Israel's plans for the Middle East. So my first, I don't even know if you know who Israel Shahak was. Do you know?
Yes.
Yes. And because he translated into English the plans that Israel had to control and dominate the Middle East. And he started, these plans date from the time of David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister of Israel. And so a lot, I think, of what has happened in the Middle East is in part directly based on those plans that were developed in Israel. The other thing that I wanted to say is,
Judith, if I don't mind interrupting, we are running out of time. You want to make it fast or let him answer because there's 2 more people behind you and there's 3 more people on the other side.
Okay. I just want to make one then comment that before the establishment of, before 1967, I would say, most Jews were not Zionists and were not big supporters of Israel. Certainly before the establishment of the State of Israel, most Jews were either totally indifferent or anti-Zionist. At that time, I was a Zionist, and I was very aware of what the situation was in the Jewish community.
Okay, I'm just going to answer the second question about Israel Shahak. I read so much that I find it almost impossible to remember who said what. So I won't deal directly with what Israel Shahak said about Israeli goals. But I think there's no question that the Israelis, or let me put it differently, that the early Zionists had extremely ambitious territorial goals. The evidence, in my opinion, is clear that the Israelis had no interest in creating a Palestinian state. They wanted all of Mandate Palestine for themselves, and they even wanted other pieces of territory in the region, including some Syrian and Egyptian territory. As you all know, Vladimir Jabotinsky was the leader of the so-called revisionists. The revisionists were called revisionists because they were deeply upset with the fact that the British created Transjordan as a separate state out of the Palestinian Mandate. And the revisionists wanted to revise the Palestinian Mandate, or Mandate Palestine, to include both the East Bank and the West Bank of the Jordan. So the right-hand side of the Zionist movement in the early 1920s wanted what is today Jordan, as well as the West Bank, of course Gaza Strip, the Sinai, and so forth and so on. So they had an extremely ambitious agenda. And as somebody pointed out before, the Israelis have never agreed to what their final borders are because they would like to expand those borders. With regard to other states in the region, there's also no question, and this makes perfect sense given how states behave, that the Israelis have a deep-seated interest in making sure that all of the Arab states in the region around them are as weak as possible. I think the Israelis would be perfectly happy if Iran, Syria, and Iraq all disintegrated and broke up into a handful of smaller states, because they would then be less of a threat to Israel. So the argument that Israel had expansionist territorial aims, or has had expansionist territorial aims from the beginning, and has had a deep-seated interest in weakening its potential adversaries, is, I think, perfectly true.